The deadly journey to the Dark Continent continues in this week's chapter of Hunter x Hunter. So many things are going on in this week's chapter, and it had a lot of fantastic characterization for all of the princes and princesses of the Kakin Kingdom. In fact, the real star of this week's chapter, without a doubt, has to be the character of Benjamin, the very first son of the king of the Kakin Kingdom. What I find most interesting about Benjamin is how I had this preconceived judgment about him, where originally I thought he was all brawn. In fact, he's very calculating and uses all of his counsel in order to make a lot of really logical moves, despite the fact that his overall plan is to basically kill all of his brothers and sisters so that he can be the winner of this big succession war. But aside from that, we also had a lot of other great moments from some of the other fantastic characters, so let's just sort of break them down one by one. First, let's talk about the character of Zhang Li. He's that one guy who has that one Nen beast, which is in the shape of a giant circle, which is also a reference to a Buddhist symbol, and he himself is just sort of conflicted and confused as to why all of Prince Wobble's bodyguards have been killed. Why would someone go after a baby first? Are they trying to cover up their own tracks? Are they trying to sweep something under the rug? Are they just trying to throw everyone off? That's exactly what Zhang Li is trying to figure out, and of all of the princes, I think he's definitely one of the smartest ones of the bunch. And that leads us to Camilla. Camilla is a very strange character because she seems to be very full of herself. She even refers to herself in the third person whenever she talks, and she even has a nickname for herself, Cammy. And she is really confused about this entire succession war, especially because she doesn't know if she should take the whole dropping out thing and actually not surviving thing seriously. And the king is not being very clear about any of this, saying that if you drop out, you're not going to survive, and you can interpret that as you will. It's kind of hard to say because we already have characters like Hulkenberg who've decided to drop out of the succession war. Does this mean that he's going to be fine, or is he inevitably going to be killed by someone? It's kind of hard to say, but that's when Benjamin comes in and he confronts his very greedy sister and basically just puts on a really tough front and announces to his father that he will be the one to be the winner of this succession war. This is a bold declaration from his character, but before we get to even more of Benjamin's stuff, let's talk about the fourth prince, who continues to have a name that I frankly just cannot freaking pronounce. He's still going through all of his crazy meditation trying to understand the concept of Nen, and you even get to see that Theta is still there, still sort of coaching him how to actually utilize these abilities. There's even a small little panel where you can see her sort of hanging out right next to him, and she looks uncomfortable as shit. Like, she really doesn't want to be there with this guy who collects body parts. And honestly, can you even blame her? I mean, the fourth prince is creepy as shit. But that brings us to Benjamin, who honestly, like I said, I think was the coolest character from this chapter, and one that I'm really starting to enjoy, especially because, like I said at first, I didn't really think there was that much to the character, with him basically just being big, bulky, and brawny. Even more so when you saw him actually walking away from his father and Camilla being super pissed off, ripping his shirt off Incredible Hulk style, then seeing that he's covered by this giant aura of Nen. It's made very clear because he does say it himself that he is a Nen user, and that makes sense considering that he goes toe-to-toes with lions and rips their heads off like it's just fun for him. This is a character who I honestly think is someone we're going to have to look out for, but the fact that he's had such a strong presence so early on, and the fact that he's the first son of the Kakin Kingdom, leads me to believe that we shouldn't get too attached to him too early. They make it seem like he's going to be one of the major threats of this arc, and that could very well be a red herring. Which, again, is what I think is most interesting about this entire arc right here in general. You're trying to sort of figure out who it is, who is the bad guy, who will survive, and who's going to make it out of this situation alive before they even get to the Dark Continent in the first place. Especially because I'm not sure if it was such a good idea for Kurapika to announce over on the intercom about the concept of Nen or even Nen beasts, because now everybody has sort of like this weird interest in it, and they're all going to go about it in a different way, with some of them deciding they're going to drop out, others not being interested, and others planning to take full advantage of this succession war. And that goes back to what I think the king was saying. This is all up for interpretation. He might say that this means that someone might not survive, but that could mean a number of different things. They might not actually make it out of this weird little succession war. They might literally be killed. It is very hard to say. What I will say is, this was a tough chapter to read. I'm not saying that it wasn't impossible to understand, but I had to read it a good couple of times to get a firm understanding of truly what was going on, and even still, I'm a little confused by some of the major events. That doesn't take away from any of the chapter at all. In fact, I still think it's a very good read, and I know that a lot of people are still begging for some Hunter x Hunter action, but I'm willing to wait for it just a little bit more, because these are characters that we have to get to know, and considering that there are a ton of them, I think it's important that we build them up just a little bit more before we start getting to that classic, ridiculous, and over-the-top action that we love from the Hunter x Hunter series. So, what's the rundown on this week's chapter of Hunter x Hunter? It was one hell of a heavy read, but I'm still really enjoying this arc despite the fact that it can be kind of confusing at times. But what I really love about it is that it does force me to go back and read it a couple of times, and you always end up noticing little details that you never saw before, like Theta being completely freaked out by the fourth prince of the Kakin Kingdom. But like I said, I think the real star of this chapter, without a doubt, had to be the character of Benjamin, who proved that he's not just muscle, but he's actually got one hell of a brain inside of his freaking noggin. I really love that he's taking a lot of advice from his council, in particular the character of Balsamic, who's letting him know that we need to learn a little bit more about the Nen beasts and their actual nature, and how we actually are going to be able to attack these other princes and take them down. And of course, I don't believe that Benjamin is going to be using his Nen beast to make that happen, considering that it is a parasitic type. It's something that is going to act on his own, but considering that he already has the ability to use Nen, leads me to believe that he's going to be one hell of a threat to all of these other princes, and he's most certainly going to use these big giant abilities to take them down. That, and there's another big surprising element at the very end of this week's chapter. As Kurapika and them are getting ready to leave the room, suddenly this would-be assassin just appears in front of them, and he claims to have almost been attacked. And this guy just has the biggest shit-eating grin on his face. You can tell that he is just putting on one hell of an act, and he seems to be enjoying it as well. And he's been sent there to basically bump Kurapika and the rest of the guards off. I'm really curious to know, though, why they're going after Wobble. I mean, it's just a baby. Why is this baby so important? Again, this is one of those situations where you can't really judge a book by its cover. You have to realize that this child is probably going to end up being incredibly important. And despite the fact that there's a baby and then a giant hulking man and they're not going after that guy first, leads me to believe that there's something about Wobble that we don't quite know about yet, and I'm sure it's going to be revealed in some of the coming chapters in the next couple of weeks. What I will say is this was one hell of a read that's definitely worth rereading a couple of times, if only to appreciate it a little bit more. It seems a little daunting at first, considering that damn near every page seems to read like a damn light novel, but it does have some pretty invigorating dialogue, and it gets me really excited to read more of it. So I liked this one. I also just continue to love all of the designs of all these brand new characters. They're all so different from one another, and it really does speak to the strengths of the artist to being able to create so many unique characters and show them all off at once. So, fantastic read right here. Benjamin truly is the star right here, and I can't wait to see more of him in the next couple of chapters, and to see some more amazing twists and turns. I liked this chapter. I think it was a little wordy, kind of like the other ones, but it's sort of a necessary evil, but that didn't make this a bad chapter. In fact, I thought it was pretty damn good. So, I'm going to give this one right here a 4 out of 5. Check it out, Hunter x Hunter fans. Make sure to tell me your thoughts about this week's chapter in the comment section below. What did you think about Benjamin in this week's chapter and his badass Nen abilities? What sort of twists and turns are you hoping to see in this arc? And what is the deal with the assassin at the very end of the chapter? And what does the king truly mean by surviving the succession war? What's your interpretation? Thank you all again for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for all things Hunter x Hunter manga related. Like I said, please leave me a comment telling me what you liked or didn't like, or anything else you thought about this week's chapter of Hunter x Hunter. And of course, if you liked this chapter, make sure to use your secret Nen abilities to hit that like button. Really helps out our videos a lot. I'll see you guys next time. Take care, and as always, stay down, baby.